Boring AI is actually the future. It's things that automate decisions that we don't need to make. I'm ordering stuff in supply chain. If everything goes within a certain tolerance threshold, it carries on. Human is removed from the loop. That doesn't mean I'm getting rid of the human. It means the human is doing something more value add somewhere else. Okay, there's an exception on that. Okay, so now human has to go look at this and go, okay, cool, press button, that can carry forward. Boring AI allows me to do my demand forecasting. Is it busy on a bank holiday weekend? If the weather changes, what does it do? How do I look at trends? What kind of things are currently going viral? What do I want to have in my stock? These are the types of things that boring AI can automate, but what everyone's talking about is the sexy AI, like this super shiny dashboard and this agents running around and doing stuff that's going to do nothing for you. If you jump here, AI is going to expose the flaws of your entire process at a huge level, which will then expose larger process debt and data debt you'll have. So you've got to start back to basics and go, what's my process? How do I standardize it? How do I automate it?
Welcome back to Retail Disrupted, where every week we speak to the leaders and disruptors shaping the future of retail. My guest today is very much a leader and a disruptor. Vineta Bajaj is the CFO at Holland Barrett. She joined the business last year after having served as Group CFO at Rohlik Group, the pan-European online grocery business. And she's also held various financial director roles within Ocado. So we're definitely going to be getting her thoughts on grocery e-commerce, and we will also be diving into leadership, finance, and the evolving retail landscape. Let's talk about your career path, because I'm curious to know whether becoming a CFO was always the plan, or is it something that just sort of happened more organically?
I think the way I'm built as a human is no matter what I do, I kind of do it to the best of my ability. So, some people's career trajectories take them quite linear, or sometimes they go interesting work or interesting projects or interesting days, or they want to lead large teams but not be the person kind of in the room. It's fascinating the types of people you meet who go, I never want to be a CFO. I always want to be number two to the CFO. And they build their careers around that. For me, I always went, I want to kind of have a bit of a ride or die. I want to be like in the room. It's my decision. The business goes under because of me. It succeeds because of me. It doesn't go under, just to clarify. But I want it. I want to have all of it, right? And so I think how I got to that was probably just a lot of fantastic opportunities I was given at the right time. You mentioned I was part of Ocado Group. I was there for 10 years, and the plan wasn't to be there for 10 years. It was about 2, and then, like most businesses, do 2 years, change job, get pay increase, make money, all that. And I found interesting work every 2 years. I was given a new project or a new promotion or something new that would tick off stuff on my CV. That meant that I just happened to grow through that and then take my first CFO role after 10 years at Rohlik Group, which is obviously an online grocery business in Europe, which then I was able to kind of do the journey again there, because Ocado was a online retailer that was transitioning through a huge business transformation in the public light and internationalizing. And I was kind of in the middle of that from a finance perspective, which was amazing, especially from experience. And then in Rohlik Group, Rohlik is also an online grocer, but we do Rohlik Group. We're doing same day grocery, so you would have your £100 baskets within 1 to 3 hours. It was hyper local, so you could get your farm to fork offering. You could support local business through it, but also it had some similarities to Ocado. It had large scale automation. It had large tech teams. So these businesses were very tech focused businesses that happened to be proving their product in retail. And then moving to Holland Barrett was fascinating, because it's a retailer first, in that it's a stores business. It's a 100-year-old retailer that is absolutely invested in transforming and disrupting the market segment that it's currently in. And my background is, double-digit growth and reduced burn, raising money. So having that experience coming to Holland Barrett has been really interesting, actually.
Yeah. And you mentioned retail transformation. You mentioned grocery commerce. We're going to come back to those in just a sec. But first, I want to ask you about your leadership style, because I think when a lot of people hear CFO, they imagine spreadsheets and board meetings. You're kind of breaking the mold of what a modern CFO looks like. I think you're incredibly approachable. You post cat memes on LinkedIn, which I love.
Obviously. Yeah.
Obviously. And also you are a female CFO, which is still relatively rare. So I'd love to just get your take on leadership. Like, how intentional is your leadership style, and where does it come from?
So I always think about back to good managers I've had and why they worked for me. So the things that worked for me, which basically drive two of my most important values as to how I lead, is making sure that I have a voice. I've worked in some businesses where, I obviously trained in a big four firm. I've worked in businesses where it was, no, these people go to this meeting, you're too junior, or your opinion isn't relevant because you're too junior. Which is a point in time in businesses and business journey, doesn't work for me, right? So for me, being in an environment where it doesn't matter my experience, my age, I have a voice, that is very key. And that means that whoever works for me, I want to hear their opinion. We can disagree and commit. I can go, that's really good, but actually, this is why not? And then it turns into a teaching moment. But then that person walks away feeling heard, understanding why that wasn't the case, but feeling like they've had that input. And that's really key, because I hate those experiences where you go, well, I think this is wrong, but no one's listening to me because I'm like, what's little old me minus 5, 6? I'm like, no, everybody has that voice, right? So that is a really, really key thing for me, because that's how I was able to develop personally, was just being able to kind of go, I disagree with you. And people allowed me to do that. And I learned. That's number one. And then number two, kind of the cat memes. You have to be yourself. It's really key, right? I'm sitting here in a black t-shirt, I have a hoodie, right? If you talk to anybody, I'm pretty sure I'm wearing the same clothes I saw when we went to a black tie dinner, actually, right? Like, I am just the same as how you see me. Honestly, it's a bit silly. My mother hates it. But that's just how you see me. So, when you spend 40 hours of your week in an environment, you have to be yourself. If you fake being something you're not, it actually seeps into your personal life in a detrimental way, because it actually impacts your mental health, right? And I just can't be something I'm not. Like, I'm obviously not going to put my foot in my mouth. I'm obviously not going to, I'm obviously going to be semi-political or just know when to speak in different meetings. Like, I'm not silly, right? But I have to be who I am. I have to share that, and I encourage that from my whole team, which is why when you see my presence on LinkedIn, or you see my presence in articles that I write for different publications, I am like, what you see is what you get. And I guess when it comes to the female side of things, it's interesting. I've had a lot of women come to me and be like, oh my God, like, I want to be like you. And I'm like, no, you don't. It's like, no. But I do get a lot of that. And I think it's actually not about women. It's actually just about opportunity. One thing that I was afforded in my career was, so I'm Irish. I went to a really good university in Ireland, one of the best business schools in the country that I'm also on the board of now. When I came to the UK, no one could go, well, she's off from Redbrick University, or, oh, she's, they couldn't put me in a box. And because they couldn't put me in a box, they weren't able to then limit me by going, well, you're from the Polytech, not from that, or you're not from that, right? So they had to judge me on my merits of the work that I did. And I'm very passionate about that with my leadership style. I kind of go, it doesn't matter if they went here or they went there, because you don't know if you had a bad A-level year and therefore you didn't get into a good university. Who knows? It doesn't really matter, actually. What matters is what you see in front of you, because the person in front of you is what you get. And so I'm quite passionate about making sure those voices are heard and people are given opportunities in business, even if they have 2 years experience versus 10. If they've got the right attitude and they're motivated, let them sink or swim, right? Like, I'm quite passionate about that, which is obviously very different to the safe way. But the answer is, I can't do double-digit growth. I can't change the world with safe. So I'm not going to.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It reminds me of, so I moved to the UK when I was 23, and I was a research associate in a much bigger organization. And I remember tagging along to these meetings and going to, especially I was working on the grocery side of research at the time, and going into, I don't know, it was one of the big CPGs. I just remember speaking up and asking questions, and they were kind of like, who's this young American, and I felt the same. I just thought, well, actually I have ideas and I want to be heard. And I was fortunate enough to have a leadership team that encouraged that. And I think it's so refreshing to hear you speak. And also to your point around authenticity and transparency. And this is something that came up on the podcast recently around how that's just expected today, I think, of leaders. And we used to have a professional persona and a personal persona, but I feel you're right. Like, those two are increasingly becoming merged. So really interesting to get your views.
It
I would
varies,
agree.
right? Just on that point, sorry. So it's like,
Yeah, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
so in Rohlik Group, I was also for nearly a year a chief people officer as well, because I wasn't busy enough. And we used to do the induction, where actually one thing that was really key for us was that we said, well, the induction process is really key to bringing people into the business, because why do people not, why do you have people who churn so much or don't churn? Or, well, what's the reason behind that? And the root cause comes into, you treat an employee like a customer. So you say, the minute you engage that employee, and that comes from once they see the advert for the job to when the recruiter contacts them, to every part of that process is the onboarding funnel of the customer, effectively your employee. And so when you onboard them, you don't go, well, here's the virtual learning, go sit down on a corner. That's a horrible way to onboard, right? So what we did was we actually obviously invested in 1 to 2 days, took them to the warehouse, things like that. But a key thing was that different exec board members, and I was doing it for a while, would spend 2 hours of their first induction day every month, talking them through the values, or at the time the ingredients of the business, right? And how we live them, how we showcase them, and the examples of how we live them, right? And that's actually really important. And one thing I used to say was, and I used to always get shot down, was I was like, I don't actually believe in work-life balance, right? People go, oh God, right? And I'm like, because work is part
That
of your
sounds scary.
life. But it's because work is part of your life, right? And that's the point. The point
Yeah.
is not like there's no clear divide of 9 to 5 anymore. That doesn't mean work all the hours under the sun. It just means that, people always say, oh, I work times that suit me, but we all work in our sleep. We all dream about the problems and we kind of make notes. It's a blur, but that doesn't mean it's a negative blur, because you choose to put yourself in a positive environment with interesting work, with interesting people, and it's part of your life. You spend more time in a work environment than you actually do with your family sometimes, right? Like, it's absolutely mental to have especially in finance, right? It depends on whether it's month end or year end. It causes you a lot of challenge. So I think that bringing yourself to work and being yourself is actually more important than ever. It's so important as a leader to allow people to have that voice. You want that diversity in the boardroom. You want that diversity of voice, of multi-generational voice. It's great because here at Holland Barrett, I'm super detail focused, not just finance, but why processes work and why they don't work. And so I've had this interesting situation where I've gone to someone and I've said, oh, what's the answer? And they'll go, oh, I need to go check with someone. Okay, cool. And then they'll come back with the second person. They'll go, oh, this is the answer. I'm like, great. So, and I have a follow-up question. Oh, we don't know. We need to go back. So I was like, do you know what? I just want to talk to the person who actually has the answers. Just because clearly you're talking to some people. Again, I'm still new. I don't know who to call. And so then I had this meeting where I brought all these people in a room, and I brought the people who know the detail. And then I had their manager and their manager and their manager show up. So I had where I invited 6 people, I had 15 people. And I literally was like, right, well, I don't need you. You can go back, take your hour back. I don't need you. And I go, but and I'm like, I don't need hierarchy. I need the answer because I'm trying to move quick. And the thing is, from a leadership perspective, it's so powerful, because those people who have never had an audience with me in other types of businesses, are actually explaining. Because actually, if you know what you're talking about, it's actually not a daunting meeting at all. It's actually more daunting to have your manager, your manager's manager, and your manager's manager in the room. That's actually more scary, I think. But actually showcasing that you actually know what you're talking about is actually powerful. And if you don't know what you're talking about, okay, well then you should be, you should be terrified of that meeting. But if you do know what you're talking about, it's great.
Yeah. It reminds me of something that I interviewed James Keyes, who's the former CEO of Blockbuster, and he talked about big company disease. That's how he put it, and how as companies grow, communications get bogged down, things get more complex, there's more layers, and it just gets harder to move faster. And just talked about the importance of innovation and focus. And it's it's just really interesting to hear your views on that. I'd like to move on and talk about grocery e-commerce.
Great.
And especially with your CFO hat on, because we know that making grocery e-commerce profitable is not exactly an easy thing to do for retailers. But at the same time, they can't afford to not be there, unless maybe it's Aldi or Lidl, right? So can you talk us through the economics of this model? Can it ever really work at scale?
Customers want it, so businesses have to adapt to it, number one, right? There was a scenario where people used to go to stores once a week. Now it's twice a week. Then it was like, oh, I'll get some really crazy quick commerce. Then it's online. Then it's a bit of quick commerce. And now it's it's very hard to predict the shape of the week because you don't know when someone's in the office. You don't know if they have remote. You don't know if they have kids. You don't know if they're ordering Instacart, DoorDash, Uber Eats, Deliveroo, whatever it might be, Bolt, everything, right? Glovo. I'm just trying to tag all of them here. Um, you know, um, you just don't know the shape, right? So then it comes down to, if I'm a grocer, um, do I just stick with my store model, right? Well, when I have an aging workforce and there's 4 generations and, that has purchasing power, which is, God, I'm probably older now. So like, my parents, me, if I had kids, and then, Gen Alpha, effectively you have kids who have like, a Revolut card at 11, right? Who had the ability to say, well, actually, I would like something on Deliveroo, because their parents have allowed them to do that, which is fine, which means that you have to be in the channels that your customers want, or else you miss out. Because when I was, I'm not sure about you, Natalie, but when I was 18 and I was in university, like I would go to the grocery store, or I would walk, if I was in university now, and if I was sharing with 3 people, I might order one Ocado order, right? And go, let's just divvy it up between the 3 of us. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, why would I waste my
Why wouldn't
time
you?
walking?
Yeah.
Like, why would I, right? And so, grocers have to adapt to the channel their customers are in, right? So that's number one, right? So when you realize that actually I need to do the channel, that doesn't mean you need to invest in large scale automation. It just doesn't mean you have to do like crazy store models or dark stores. You just have to kind of go, well, firstly, it's how much money do you have to test the channel? And then 2, because ultimately online will always be a vertical or a part of your overall grocery offering, because ultimately your store fascia is where it's at, right? Effectively, especially with the long leases you're going to have. So I think the next thing then comes down to, what's the easiest, quickest way to test a channel, right? So, what you're seeing in the UK now is you're seeing large retailers going, actually, I'll just do an Uber Eats or Deliveroo, and I'll just do store pick, which is relatively inefficient from a cost perspective, but I still have to hire people to sit in the store, right? And actually, the quicker I turn the stock, the cash I convert, right? So therefore, if it turns my cash and I have to have people paid to stock my shelves and sit on things, then actually, why not try it, right? So that in itself, often, especially when you have margins of 28 to 35% in grocery, you're basically giving away all your margin. But what you're doing is you're on the channel where your customers are buying, which basically converts cash. And then you get to a point where you go, right, well, now I'm making a lot more money. And actually, and then you're maybe creating a space at the back of your store where you have these SKUs that are always being picked because people always order, I don't know, if I think about my delivery order on a Sunday morning, it ends up being Irish sausages, bread, definitely Irish butter, because I always run out, despite the fact that I always say I won't, and probably some jam donuts, right? Let's be realistic, right? So that will be mine, right? And if I'm
I like
ordering
how
every
half of those
Sunday,
items were Irish.
oh yeah, no, absolutely. You can take the girl out of Ireland, right? But anyway, so you basically, so there will be some stuff that's commonality, right? So there are things that people always buy: bread, milk, eggs, sugar, custard, whatever it is, right? My pasta, tomatoes, whatever. I start creating an area in your store, and then you go, well, actually, I'm creating this area in my store, but actually the volume that's coming in, what happens is retailers start going, maybe we should do our own software, maybe we should have a more efficient way of doing it, because actually this is costing us. Actually, I'm making cash for it, but how do I make money out of it, right? And there's a few ways to look at that. The first step could be, is there automation or a more efficient way of doing it in the store? That can be a physical hardware automation, or it can be a software automation, being my handheld go to that aisle and pick it very quickly. We've seen all the people in the stores, in the grocery stores, with a trolley, with a handheld going, oh, I'll pick that, scan and put it in. And you often sit there going, is this efficient, right? But the answer is, if I'm turning the stock, then I'm turning it into cash. So I have more cash to invest in things that allow me then to offer a better proposition for customers. So that's one. The other option is I go, right, well, do I have a better partnership with Deliveroo, Snappy Shopper, or whatever the marketplace platform is? The answer is, you're connected to them no matter what. So then you turn around and go, do I create my own delivery platform, whether it's a Whoosh or a Scoot or whatever it might be, right? The ones which is exactly what the grocers are doing right now. They're going, well, why would I keep paying them all this money, right, when I can just build it myself? Like, I mean, that's basically what's happening, right, in the ecosystem.
Yeah. Well, Sainsbury's has just integrated their Chop, their kind of under 1 hour delivery, into the main app, which I think shows that quick commerce is very much here to stay. And you've got Amazon now as well, having launched recently. They're I think that's is it under 30-minute delivery as well. So it definitely feels in the UK that there is this concerted effort to move into quick commerce. Like before, I think we were all sort of watching it and wondering, is this going to last? How do you make it work? How do you make the economics work? But as you say, consumers are looking for that. So I think retailers don't really have a choice.
Exactly,
Well,
right?
exactly.
I think and then there's a point where you go, right, well, I've got a lot of volume going through my store. Because remember, if I'm a physical retailer, I'm trying to create as much revenue per square footage, right? That's the whole point, right? Because I've got this asset that so how do I turn it quicker is really, really key, especially when I have like no margin, right, in grocery, effectively, right? So when you have that, then you go, great, well, then there's an inflection point where you go, right, well, I've actually got a crazy amount of volume coming from all my stores. And all my stores are turning into little mini hubs, which is great. Do I create a micro fulfillment warehouse? Do I outsource to a bigger provider? Do I build an automated warehouse to get more efficiency of throughput, right? And that's kind of the automation journey. Now, what's happened with some retailers is they've gone straight to automation. They've gone to half automation. It varies on what's been happening in that journey, but effectively, the answer for grocers is you have to go where your customer is. And if your customer is on the sofa and wants it in 30 minutes, like me, if you an hour after your Ocado delivery arrives, because obviously you forgot something, because why not? You're the online shopper, and you still go to the top up. You've still got 3 channels that you can get people on, which is crazy because people spend that amount of money because they put a price in convenience, which means you have to be in all 3 of them, but you don't have to spend a crazy amount of money to be everywhere. You can kind of MVP it to try it and then work out what you do, especially now when capital has a large cost to it compared to pre-COVID. People can't afford to spend 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million on capital investments, right? Now, the thing about retail and grocery is that and this is what I love about grocery, right? And we're doing Holland Barrett now a bit as well, is when you're fighting for like 28 to 35% margin, it's like the name of the game is once you get to that margin of gross profit, like how do you save it with volume, right? So how do you go, right, well, I made enough money, but now I need to optimize my fulfillment, my supply chain, my people cost, my last mile delivery cost, all these types of things, and my cost per order. So looking at my clear unit economics and understanding if I just get, again, if I think about my same day or next day grocery, not my quick commerce, just getting that extra order in means that I could save 0.3p cost per order. I'm making it up here. And then if I'm doing, I don't know, 100, 500, 1,000, 2,000, that scales. And then as that compounds, the tiniest pennies make a difference, which then means things like trade marketing, getting a better deal or better triggers and promos with retailers going, we'll put this on our quick commerce, we'll put this online, or, getting retail media even, especially when you're a grocer as well, whether physically in store or online. It's an extra 1p, 2p, 3p, 4p. That's literally how you do this. So it really is a pennies
game. Do you think that sorry to interrupt, but do you think that quick commerce is potentially eroding that in that case? Because that's obviously much more expensive to fulfill.
It is, right? But it depends on how you do it, right? So it's an interesting thing because right now, as you said, we're seeing all the large grocers offering their own version. I'm going to plug something now. I wasn't planning to, but like sorry, I'm a non-exec on a business called Snappy Shopper, and Snappy Shopper is a tech business that provides software to unlock convenience retail. So the mom and pop shops or the smaller stores, they started in Scotland to unlock that, because actually the likes of Deliveroo and Uber Eats are unaffordable, right? Giving away 25% to 34% margin, just you can't deal with it, right? And so large grocers are going, well, I'll just throw a bunch of money in and I'll build my own software. And then other businesses are going, well, people are shopping online. How else do I do that? So being able to unlock that the high street to a different level is key, especially how people want to shop local. So on one hand, if you look at the unit economics of just quick commerce, giving up 4% or 5% is okay. 34% is ridiculous, right? But like giving up, I'm making it up here to make a point, but giving about 4 to 5% is actually okay, because then ultimately, as long as you can get them to upsell themselves, buy something good, take something that's going to be out of date, take a flash sale, allows you to then convert stuff to cash. So there's a balance, right? But ultimately, it brings your customer back to your store, which is the key point, because you go, oh yeah, John's down the road is always great, or even my local Morrison's is also great too. I find that balance. But it's interesting. I've written some articles about like quick commerce doesn't work, and financially it doesn't, right? A couple of years ago it didn't. We've seen that, right? but there's a software approach to it, because if I go to a vendor who goes, you'll be on my marketplace, I will do the delivery, but then who gets to see the customer data, which is where the value is. You then look at it and go, well, actually, that doesn't work, because actually I want to deliver with my own fleet, or I want to get my own person on a bike to go deliver that, right? So then if you disaggregate that, you go, right, well, I'm a retailer, and so I want to be on my Just Eat, Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Snappy Shopper, whatever it might be, like all the relevant marketplaces I want to be on. But how I fulfill it is up to me, which then means that if you have the choice, you can then choose the most efficient unit economic way for you to do that, rather than having to go, well, an Uber driver gets my order and he's the one who delivers it, or an Uber driver can get my order, but a delivery driver gets it. And then it means that the retailer has the ability to do kind of RFPs and negotiate with different people. Why is that happening? Because quick commerce is interestingly here to stay, right? So ultimately, it's about being present exactly where your customers where your customers are. It's super interesting. I was at this conference and this guy said, I think I posted on my LinkedIn before. He said, "Oh, I'm not on TikTok. I don't shop on TikTok." And I'm like, that's like the worst thing you could say. Like, I'm on TikTok. Why? Because I need to understand where my customers go, what they look for, why they shop, what's the checkout walk. I need to understand that to then work out, is this a channel I need to think about? And I think anybody who turns around and goes, well, I don't really do quick commerce, or I prefer going to do the butchers and getting it, you have to see where your customers shop to then understand the value that it unlocks for you. I
You've
don't
got to be
shop
where your
there.
customers are, right? Like it's as
Absolutely.
simple as, I mean, I make it sound very simple, but that is, if you're not where your customers are, then you're going to be in big trouble.
But when I was interviewing for Holland Barrett, right? And I mean, I joined because um, I where in my experience, I don't have store background, right? So, it's quite funny because I always say, well, I know I've been saying this high street is dead. I mean, deadish, I take it back, but there is a purpose of the high street store. Like there is, especially when you're looking at the wellness category, right? Because people can read stuff online, but sometimes when something's so intimate, you might go, and it's not a pharmacy and it's not a doctor. You go, I just want to talk to someone going, my hand's hurting, or I've been extra tired lately and I don't know why. Um, but that's not a conversation you're going to have through LLM. You just want to go talk to someone. So there is a purpose for what that's, and it's actually very similar to grocery, because food is so emotional for people because you have an emotional connection to what you put in your body, right? It's the same thing with wellness, right? You go into a store and you're literally sitting there going, there's something wrong with me, or I have an ailment, or I'm curious, or something's happened, or, whatever it might be, or I'm curious about gut health, or I'm curious about, I have a female issue, or I'm maybe I'm perimenopausal. And it's quite a personal issue because, people don't talk about a lot of these things.
Vineta, let's talk a little bit more about Holland Barrett. You are about 6 months into your role now. Holland Barrett is a business that is undergoing a huge amount of change, very much pushing a digital first wellness strategy. Tell us a little bit more about this transformation and some of the learnings so far.
So the purpose of why I joined Holland Barrett was firstly to kind of understand how we are showing up as a retailer, as a store, right? Because there is a purpose for that in the high street, because the high street stores are now, they're values driven, they're brand driven, they're purpose driven, they're mission driven, they're community driven, right? This is what's coming in this crazy techno world we're living in. People want that community, which is despite the fact that we just talked about not ordering my bread or going to the store to get my bread. But it's just, there's both sides of it. Again, be where your customers are. But what Holland Barrett are doing is, and one of the reasons I've joined is we're going through this very large omni-channel transformation. We have a huge app. We've a really, really good app. We've our website. A huge amount of our orders is omni-channel. People will pop into the store to pick up something, but they'll also order on the website. So how do you catch them in the ecosystem is actually quite key. And how do you build the infrastructure around that? So, we've just launched our auto store. So I'm currently temporarily responsible for warehouses and supply chain. Wasn't on the job spec, minor point. But no, but
Throw it in there.
it's what I enjoy, right? Because it's how you make money, right? But we have this, we've just turned on our large automation, and the whole point is how do I get the right stuff to the people at the right time that's cost efficient, right? So investing in that large scale automation, we have large tech teams that are looking at the data of how people shop, how we look at customer insights, how we then give them the right things, and how we make sure we have the right products in the right stores as well, right? All of this is really key to being a true omni-channel retailer that's kind of adding years to people's lives. I always join mission-led businesses, changing the way the world shops. Online grocery is fundamental thing that is going to change generations to come. And especially in Holland Barrett now, where you won't feel it right now, taking your one supplement a day, it will improve your last years or your existing years or next years in your life.
Vineta, I'd love to get your thoughts on how you measure ROI, because as an industry, we have historically struggled with short-termism, right? So how do you balance the need for short-term profitability with the longer-term investment in things like technology? You mentioned automation, customer experience. There is this need to keep innovating, keep experimenting, keep improving that experience for customers because it's so competitive, right? But at the same time, things need to be financially viable and sustainable. And so I'd love to get your take on this. I know one of my guests recently talked about how we should be measuring experience per square foot instead of just sales per square foot. As a CFO, I'm not sure how you feel about that, but I would love to get your take and tell us, how do you measure success
I'm going to give
today?
you the wrong CFO answer, which is we have a senior leadership team meeting here and with our key leaders in our business. And I say things like, don't come to me with ROI, right? Because it's fake, right? It's like, I'm spending this amount of money. I'll divide it by this. My payback is 2.5 years. Oh, look, that looks really good. Let's spend the money. That's not actually what's going to happen. What it doesn't include is it doesn't include things like the finance person you're going to have who's going to model it for you, the extra cloud service costs that you're going to include as a result of it. I don't know, the tech tickets as a result. Like there's a village around when you do things. And I guarantee you that significant parts of fully loaded cost business cases do not include stuff like getting the events team or to do comms on X or whatever. You just don't catch everything, right? Which is why I think it's just fake, right? I think the way I look at it is I look at it from a business economics perspective, right? So I go, my first bias is, how will the customer's life change? That's important, right? Will they get a better assortment? Will they get better pricing? Will they get dynamic pricing? Will they get better personalization? What changes for them if I'm thinking about something for a customer, especially when you think about tech. So a great example is someone had a tool and this software is going to connect all our softwares and it'll allow them to understand when people phone why they're disgruntled or why they're happy or what is something like that, right? And I was like, cool. So I was like, that makes sense, right? That's just insights. So you give me a payback all you want, but the actual value is what actions will be taken off the insight that will actually make meaningful change. That's actually what I care about, right? It kind of sounds weird saying this as a finance person, because even to, investors, they ask me about ROI and I've literally turned around to them and I've gone, I'm not the person who's going to give you ROI. You're looking at the business wrong. If you think about it that way, you got to think about, if I invest this in tech, will my frequency go up? Will my conversion go up? Will my AOV go up? Will they keep coming back? Will my churn of my cohorts go up? How do I look at that? That's the key part, because then I keep making money and that compounds more and more. So this is how I look at the world, which is probably not the right answer for a CFO, but that's absolutely the answer of how you build a great business. Is
looking long term.
Absolutely looking long term, because short term is things, managing short term, investments for long term is making sure, again, now this is a finance answer, it's making sure I'm not burning money, I'm managing my travel and expenses, I'm, managing how I'm hiring people, I'm not building large teams, I'm, just having good financial control of making sure that I'm spending my money like this was my business and like I was running out of money tomorrow, and actually would I spend the money there? No, I won't. Okay, cool. So I just keep optimizing for long term, keep making sure my customers come back to me, and guess what? I'll have a business.
We've had so much to talk about that we haven't even come on to AI yet, which I think is a record for this podcast. So before I let you go, Vineta, I'd love to know, where do you see the biggest opportunities? Is it going to be about driving operational efficiencies, or is it going to be about enhancing the customer experience?
AI has become a buzzword to go, I probably should invest in technology, right? And people are going, so it's kind of been an interesting catalyst to make people go, should I automate things? AI doesn't work if you have really poor data foundations and bad process. So you've got to start back to basics and go, what's my process? How do I standardize it? How do I automate it? Right. And then the automation can be an old school automation. It can be an AI automation. It can be an AI agent. It can be all these fancy things. But if you jump here, what AI is going to do is AI is going to expose the flaws of your entire process at a huge level, right? Which will then expose larger process debt and data debt you'll have. So I always look at AI, and I've written an article on this, which is, you know, boring AI is actually the future. So what do I mean by boring AI? It's things that automate decisions that we don't need to make, right? So I'm ordering stuff in supply chain. If everything goes within a certain tolerance threshold, it carries on. Human is removed from the loop. That doesn't mean I'm getting rid of the human. It means the human is doing something more value add somewhere else. Okay, there's an exception on that. Okay, so now human has to go look at this and go, okay, cool, tick, press button, that can carry forward. But boring AI allows me to do my demand forecasting. If I think about grocery, is it busy on a bank holiday weekend? If the weather changes, what does it do? How do I look at trends? What kind of things are currently going viral? What do I want to have in my stock? Where do I need it to be at the right time? Are people, if there's a football match at 7 o'clock, do I need to make sure that those slots are open? These are the types of things that boring AI can automate. But what everyone's talking about is the sexy AI, like this super shiny dashboard and this agent's running around and doing stuff that's going to do nothing for you. Right? If your process doesn't work, your data doesn't work, your foundations don't work, right? That's why I talk about it. So I think I say it's operational, but you can apply the same thing to customers as well. If I understand how my customers shop and what they buy, and this person, I don't know, has an iron deficiency and they need X or Y, the algorithms can then go, right, you personalize that. That's boring AI. That's not sexy AI. That's not like I have a chatbot on my phone that I can talk to. I have 100 chatbots. So I think that's how I see AI. Boring AI is the future.
I love it. Boring AI. We all need to be talking more about the boring stuff and less about, as you say, the shiny new thing that it's very easy to get excited about. Vineta, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Retail Disrupted. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the podcast, please leave a rating or review or share it with others. It really makes a difference.